Well, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. I know this is quite an effort with the College of Pharmacy, Arizona Cancer Center, and AZ Bio. I thought to help kick off this session as part of the pre-session, of course, we'll be talking about precision medicine, the background about it and some updates, but also to help sort of set the stage with the broader themes for why I think we're all coming here today. It really is about interdisciplinary collaboration and also building bridges between private and academics and companies, all with the goal of creating new therapies. So with that in mind, a little while ago, the College of Law, the College of Pharmacy, and the Critical Path Institute, we created a whole coursework around regulatory science that I just wanted to quickly tell you about before we get into more of the nuts and bolts. But, so for example, we created this program because we heard from industry that there's just a big knowledge gap with how we prepare the workforce, researchers, pharmacists, to go ahead and be more familiar with the FDA and some of the regulatory guidance that's needed to bring a new therapy to market. They made it quite clear we don't want more lawyers, no need to send anyone to law school, but could we please help improve the collective knowledge base so that we don't have to backtrack, we can save time and money and be much more efficient with creating safe and effective treatments. So I gave a little to the iceberg examples that is very active in the COVID space right now with everything from off-label prescribing to emergency use authorization. These are the kinds of things that we talk about in the curriculum. Because we are talking about precision medicine specifically, I did note things that are quite common with clinical trials in relation to where you'd really want to bring in some of the ethical principles in research, particularly around informed consent, obtaining meaningful informed consent, and what that can mean when you're talking about issues like using the data for secondary research, risk of re-identification of data, accessibility to data for both the patients and for the public. And then I think what's also complicated, especially for those conducting clinical trials internationally, is even if you want to be compliant with privacy, it's not always clear how to be compliant given the different evolving privacy regimes. So these are all things we try to cover, which go along very well with the clinical side of what you're trying to achieve with the treatments. The last thing I just want to touch on with what we try to do in all of our course sessions is these broader policy considerations. Things like precision medicine, there's a lot of costs associated with developing the outcomes for that. And so related to that, you have to discuss issues like access and equity. So this is just a quick snapshot of now we have a year-round curriculum. The very first course is John Michael's course that he's delivering right now at Arizona Law, and it's aptly named for the Summit, Drug Discovery and Development. We also offer a course in clinical research ethics, again, talking about some of those informed consent issues, including vulnerable populations. And in particularly, what's often left off the table is why we have these laws and regulations and issues in the first place. And it's because of some really unethical treatment of human participants in the past. So that's also covered in the course. And we have two other courses from the Critical Path Institute on diagnostics and devices, which we work closely with Roche. We also have a great case study project that's taught by an alumnus of the College of Pharmacy, Dr. Stephen Karpin. And we have a course on educational products. And what I really think is important about this course is it's entirely from a patient or patient advocate perspective in terms of how to access non-approved medical therapies. And we're doing that in collaboration with NYU. We have a course just on devices we'll be offering next summer with the International Society for Translational Research, or International Cardiovascular, it's a long name, International Society for Cardiovascular Translational Research. And then lastly, what I think is so great for an ongoing year-round discussion is we do a colloquium where we encourage all of you to attend, participate, maybe even speak at. And it's a way where it's not these isolated once-off events, but really a way to keep the discussion and networking going year-round. Again, we created this program because we saw there was a real need. It really couldn't just be addressed by a single college or even the health sciences. It did involve law, business, and engineering, along with guidance from industry in terms of what they needed in the workforce. Very flexible as to how to engage in these topics. It could be a single course, such as John Michael's that's on drug discovery and development. We do offer a whole certificate in regulatory science, which is 4 courses. And then these also can all lead to a master's if that is of interest. And then lastly, you don't really need to take any actual coursework to just be involved in these issues that might be of interest to you or to your company or your colleagues. We just have a lot of events, almost all virtual at the moment, but where a lot of networking and sharing of resources can take place. And that really is the goal, is to improve the overall knowledge base. So we have the regulatory science program that I've been touching upon, but we also offer 3 other certificates in health law. Most recently, we'll be delivering one starting in January on health information, privacy, and data security. And that's in collaboration with Health Current, which is the state health information exchange. And I think it dovetails really well with the current curriculum, and that we can talk about data sharing agreements, governing health information technology, and then of course privacy will come up in that program. We try to make it as easy and adaptable as possible, where students can take 4 courses for their certificate, and then they can take additional courses to be part of the overall master's, which really is treating students almost like first-year law students, where they get a sense of how to write and read a contract. And other related issues. I just want to quickly wrap up so we can get to the precision medicine focus. But this is an alumnus of pharmacy, and he also was at c-path, and Michael Abramson. You can just tell it was the whole goal of how to properly prepare the workforce in a way that's more efficient going forward, where he's a pharmacist with a regulatory science training, and how much that fed into his personal passion as well. And then related to that, we have Amy over at the Arizona Cancer Center that runs clinical trials, and she basically really wanted to take this program to upscale and network. We work very closely with Roche, and they want to have the pipeline come in, and they also want to continue to upskill their workforce. So we have a nice back and forth interaction with Roche Ventana Medical Center here in Tucson. And then lastly, we have an incredible alumnus of both law and pharmacy, Brian, and I really love how succinctly he put this. There's just a crying need for those that have a clinical background to also understand the regulations, and how much time and money that could save from the very beginning if we just tried to train the new workforce with both of those backgrounds in mind. Oh, this is a snapshot of our events. This is not the first time John Michael and I have presented together. It certainly won't be the last. And we're very active, and we really make everything free of charge, and really just encourage a lot of participation from every discipline. There's some websites here if this program sounds of interest, or any of our events. Also my personal email address and Twitter information, and I'd really be delighted to hear from you, and I look forward to all the talks today. Thank you very much.
Great, well, thanks, Tara. That was a great introduction. You know, a few years ago, when we started talking about putting our course together, sorry, I'm having a problem sharing here, of course. We started talking about putting the course together. You know, we were really hoping that what we could do is we could pull together, you know, experts from across the globe to go ahead and participate in these courses, and that's exactly what we did. So the nice part is you don't have to listen to myself or Jennifer drone on within these courses. Instead, you know, we've basically pulled across the expertise in order to conduct this course. So again, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you really a quick overview of what we're doing within the course so you know what it's about. And then really the tease is going to be around precision medicine, which is one of the topics that we talk about within the course. I'd just like to show you how we go through this. Both myself as well as Jennifer Berkey host this drug development course. And what we do is, as I said, we pull, folks from FDA, from industry, from academia to talk specifically about these projects. So the nice part is the students are hearing from the experts, right? It's not recycled material. Instead, it's real material that brings up live examples and real-time examples. This was really my first adventure into an online course. And so, we tried a couple different things and we were experimental as far as doing interviews with folks and panel sessions. And I think it worked out really well. And I think it's a good course. The interaction online is great, going back and forth with individuals. And so it's worked out pretty well. So this is what we're really trying to do within the course is really talk about the U.S. As well as OUS regulatory systems. Also describe, various applications and techniques that are used within drug development for the successful bringing forward of a drug. And also talk about some of the hurdles, as well as some of the complexities that are around the economics of drug development and marketing. So here goes the teaser part. So really what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about precision medicine. And this is medical care designed to optimize the efficacy or therapeutic benefits, so that can include safety, of a particular group of patients. And this specifically uses, in many cases, genetics and molecular profiling to go ahead and better design drug treatments for individuals. And so I know another word that you guys have heard out there, and that's personalized medicine. And that's really the same thing as precision medicine. I know some people have tried to cut it definitionally, but there's no reason to do that. So really what the main goal is have the right treatment for the right patient at the right time in their disease. And like I said, the primary techniques that are utilized are next generation sequencing, right, to understand genetic differences in individuals that make them more susceptible to the positive effects of a drug and make them less susceptible to the negative effects of a drug. Pharmacogenetics are also applied within the area of precision medicine. And this is basically understanding an individual's ability to metabolize or distribute a drug within the body and how that's different from one individual to another. I mean, I think probably the most common example are the cytochrome P450s, which have variation across individuals. And what we see is that in some cases, some individuals will clear drugs slower than other individuals because they lack that important oxidative enzyme. And that could result in better efficacy in some cases. It could result in adverse events. Likewise, there's also molecular profiling that's going on within precision medicine. And this is the use of fluid and imaging biomarkers to really understand how an individual can respond to a drug or is responding to a drug. So I think if we look across drug development just in general, what we find is that drugs are not effective in everyone, right? We see that they're based on diseases. There are different levels of efficacy that are actually noticed across the population. And likewise, it's very difficult to predict adverse events and poor outcomes. And so what precision medicine allows us to do beyond this traditional approach is really begin to basically identify the patients in which therapies will be most effective, and I identify those individuals that are most at risk for adverse events, right? It's the dream, right? The perfect drug for the perfect individual, right? And this really represents, in my mind, the modernization of the drug development process. Interestingly, if you look across the past several years, what we find is that approximately a third of drugs are actually precision medicines, right? Applying the use of either genetics or phenotypic readouts to go ahead and decide whether or not an individual is eligible for a medication. Interestingly, the 2009 bar and report just came out, and so you can see the 2009 bar, and we actually see a little bit of a drop off. I was guessing, you know, based on everything that in 2019 we would actually see an increase, but we've kind of steadied off there. So I think the interesting part is that precision medicine is also going to be a very disruptive force across healthcare as well. Because if indeed we're now able to target medications for individuals, this is not only going to affect how drugs are being discovered and developed, but it also has to affect regulatory policy, the incentives, coverage, reimbursement, et cetera. And I think most importantly, how do we actually take these new technologies, these new measures, and actually apply them in the clinical practice? So, I mean, a lot of good news on one side, but then also a lot of work to be done on the other side. There is no doubt that the economics of medicine are going to change. You can imagine if you have a compound or a drug that now is showing substantial efficacy across the population, there's the opportunity to actually charge more, right? Because it's more effective, it's safer. And so this is going to change how the economics of healthcare operate. And so this is something that we need to be thinking about how we get prepared for in the future. Luckily, under President Obama, there was the FDA's Precision Medicine Initiative that was initiated in 2015. And really what the goal of this is to figure out how to best begin to implement this science, you know, across healthcare, you know, specifically across drug development. And there were two main pieces that you can pull out of this document, which is really, you know, streamlining the regulatory process for next generation sequencing, right? How do we best use this new tool, right? And then likewise, how do we enable patients to access their own information, and what's the software that's required to go ahead and actually be able to accurately interpret this information in an ethical manner, right? In an informed manner as well. So also, if you look across the Precision Medicine Initiative, you know, there were some other pieces that were definitely baked in there around, you know, better treatments for cancer. We know that the oncology community is the leader within precision medicine right now. If you look across the drugs that I listed in the previous bar chart, the majority of those are oncology drugs. And so I think now all the other therapeutic areas want to go ahead and be like oncology from the aspect of having these different tools to be able to apply. There's also a large cohort that has been started, the million-person voluntary national research cohort, which is to begin to collect baseline data around individuals. So it's a historic or a disease history, or a normal history, if you will, study to go ahead and collect these data to be able to serve as the data set to begin to create, you know, standards and understand privacy, as well as be able to find data sharing. And that all goes into really patient protection of privacy. Likewise, I mentioned the piece around the regulatory modernization. I'm going to go into that next. And then also within the Precision Medicine Initiative, there is also, you know, fostering public-private partnerships, something that c-path is really all about, and being able to help create this infrastructure that's going to be needed in the future in order for precision medicine to be successful. So again, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just simply and quickly go through two guidance documents that are really important. They both came out approximately 2 years ago in 2018. This is a clinical a database guidance, and then an analytical validation guidance. The first guidance here is really around how we best use next generation sequencing, right? And what's required for the clinical validation of establishing genotype and phenotype relationships. This is fundamentally important, right? Because as with any biomarker, and that's really what your genotype is in many ways, it has to relate to some type of outcome, right? Some hard endpoint, if you will. And that's really the important part, to be able to correlate those two so that you can better predict what is actually going to occur. And also, you know, what there was really this approach to how regulatory oversight for next generation sequencing in vitro diagnostic tests would actually occur. And that's nicely documented within this guidance document. It's funny, when you read these guidance documents, they become a little bit technical at times and also a little bit philosophical at times. But if you dive into them deeply, what you can find are some really important nuggets around how to actually apply the science. And that's what FDA is trying to do here. They're not mandating a given approach. Instead, what they're doing is they're trying to provide an appropriate guidance on how to work through a given scientific question so that when it's presented to them, it's presented in a way that both groups can work together and come up with the best approach. So also, you know, within the regulatory modernization, what we have is a guidance around developing enrichment strategies. And so how do we then apply not only the genetic data that can be derived, but then also that phenotypic data, biomarkers, may they be fluid or imaging. Now, the idea of many of these enrichment strategies are actually to make sure that we identify the population where the drug is going to work the best in, right? But you can flip that on its head a little bit too, and actually then look at what groups are actually going to have the lowest level of adverse events, or identify those groups that will have adverse events and then potentially avoid that medication or proceed with caution. Again, really, if you read through the document, it's really around tailoring the treatments for those patients to find benefit based on clinical and clinical laboratory genomic and proteomic factors. And the nice part is, if you go even deeper into the article, into the guidance document, what you can actually see there's really 3 strategies that are discussed within the document, right? And that's around decreasing heterogeneity or reducing noise within clinical trials, being able to predict what patient groups are going to respond the best to a given treatment, and then, you know, predictive enrichment around a given drug. In other words, how do you design drug trials so that you more quickly get at the answer of whether or not your drug is actually working or not? So again, you know, what we will see is that with the implementation of precision medicine, you know, we're going to identify patients where the therapy is most effective. We're going to reduce adverse events. As I said before, more effective therapies can demand premium pricing. Likewise, you know, if you can indeed demonstrate that your compound works in a larger subset of the population, has a superior safety profile, you know, that's an easier compound also to then receive regulatory approval around to be able to market it. Again, you know, precision medicine will be a disruptive force, but this disruptive force actually results in significant opportunities. If we look across Arizona, really, we have a diagnostic corridor. You know, I'm more of a biotech, biopharm guy. That's where I cut my teeth. But looking at what we have in Arizona, there's a lot of diagnostic horsepower. So how do we take advantage of this as Arizona to be able to invest in upcoming precision medicine opportunities, and then be able to advance those opportunities for the good of all patients? So with that, I'd like to stop and then open this up for any questions for myself or for Tara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tara and John Michael. So if you have any questions for the participants, please put them in the Q&A area. We do have one question, so I'll read it to you. Segmentation of patient population reduces the market size for individual therapeutics, leading to increased drug costs as companies continue to seek profitability. The savings, however, may be seen in other healthcare sectors as improved outcomes. How can we tie the cost and savings together to realize the net savings?
That's a great question. And I think that gets to the heart of really the disruptive feature of precision medicine, right? It means that who is currently, reaping benefit from healthcare is going to change, right? There's no doubt that a smaller subset of patients where you see, effectiveness go up, that will result in that premium pricing aspect. And so, hopefully there will then be these better outcomes, but that then moves money from one group to another group. And I think we just need to be prepared for that. Tara, any additional comments?
Sure. I mean, we have some precedent for this. This really comes back to just a different federal agency. Instead of the FDA, now we're talking more about CMS. And it's changing the reimbursement process where instead of a fee-for-service model in clinical care, we move more to pay for performance. And hopefully we can see more of that in this space as well, where you're looking at the overall outcomes as a way to save overall costs and potential adverse events, look at the whole picture as opposed to individual treatments. So I would say that's where the discussion again gets broader. We're not just talking about the FDA and approval, we're also thinking it has a reimbursement from the CMS and how that could help shape the future of precision.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Here's another one. Technology has led to our current strategy of genetic testing to drive precision medicine. What hurdles will need to be overcome before we can do a true phenotypic strategy to link multiple sources of inter-individual variability in drug response?
So I can start off with that one. That's a really good question as well. So, number one, I think there's an understanding gap, right? There's just the basic science that needs to happen where we can understand how to use these tools. Right now, many of these tools are very specialized as well. So that's the technology gap, right? How do we figure out how to pull these tools into clinical practice to make them more routine? That's going to be the change in healthcare that's going to occur, over the next several years. But as scientists, as clinical investigators, we have a pretty big job in front of us, right? And that's understanding how to use these tools before they can be actually implemented in a much larger fashion. Tara, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it just got me thinking about just in general, the different tools that are going to be coming available as we look at sources of real world evidence in these trials as well, and also electronic medical records. And there's just a lag behind how to regulate and enforce that, things like privacy and confidentiality, which also go into this. Once you put the data out there, how do we ensure access, ensure privacy, ensure that the public can see it if it's de-identified? So I was just thinking about the additional types of data are related to the question, and it's a very good question. It needs to still be a focus point of how we roll out this new precision medicine tool.
Yeah, Tara, that was great. I mean, bringing up the electronic health records and real world medicine registries, et cetera. You're right, because what we also have to do, and that's the science piece, is how do we tie that technology to these outcomes, right? And there's a huge source of data out there. We're not going to be able to run prospective clinical trials on every test we want to. We need to figure out how to use that data that's collected every day at healthy visits or visits for a given disease within the current healthcare system to be able to link this all together. So great point.
All right, are there any other questions today for our panelists? All right, well, Tara and John Michael, thank you for participating today. I love the talks. And I think the key part of all this that you point out here is that these type of programs that you both have developed, as well as other ones, I think is a great way to help current students, whether they're undergrads or they're already in pharmacy school, medical school, dental school, pick whatever school you want, that it gives them more options. And I know when I talk to students, especially young ones and are in middle of through the system, right, is they ought to always think about expanding their repertoire and have better opportunities in the future. So I think what you guys are doing is great.
Thank you.
So, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.